Okay. Hello everyone. This is the date is the 28th of November, and I want to introduce Ben Emlyn Jones to you all. Ben created the Hospital Porters Against the New World Order, which is you can describe what that is.
Yeah, so it's a website primarily, yes. With,
all right, but it's more than that.
Oh yeah, it's got there's a YouTube channel, a radio show, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's a big thing.
Okay. So now Ben attends many conferences, participating in most of them. He creates many interesting other videos about the paranormal, mediums, interesting places that interest him. He enjoys his research and has a lot of fun doing it. But why and how that part of him evolved is what I want to get to, because he's an interesting soul, a very nice soul. So then, my first question is, what happened that attracted you to ufology?
Well, Kathy, it's not what it is for most people. Like, they go around living normal lives for many years, and then suddenly they find they're driving along one day at night on a dark road, and this brightly lit object lands in front of them. Some aliens get out, and they say, and the man says, "Oh, I never believed in them until that moment." No, that's not what happened to me. I had no actual UFO sighting actually until I started becoming interested in UFOs. I seem to have developed a moderate interest in them and associated things such as the paranormal at quite a young age. My first UFO book was given to me when I must have been about 9 or 10 years old. I think I bought it from it was from the Science Museum of all places.
Wow.
Or my parents bought it for me when we went there on a trip. And it's the Osborne Book of UFOs. I managed to find another copy of it. It's an old book, written in 1977, and I watched films such as Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and I had a moderate interest in UFOs for quite a long time, but it never really. I don't think it ever really became a central part of my life until. I think the interest grew when I started reading more serious books about the subject, and I realised it was a serious subject. I also started reading books and watching films about the paranormal, and about various sorts of government cover-ups, and the fact that we are lied to on a vast scale, on an almost unimaginable scale, by the powers that be, the deep state, the rulers of this world. Their whole relationship with the people is based on deceit. Yeah. It's based on deception and manipulation in all kinds of different ways. There's literally hardly an honest word is passed between us. So yeah, we are essentially we live in a world which is a global form of very subtle slavery, in which we are essentially possessed individuals. We are owned. We are corralled, but our shackles are not made of steel. They're made of
95s.
95s. That's a good example. Yes, overwork, media lies, various kinds of. There's psychological warfare. There's also biological warfare and drugs, chemicals, electronics, all kinds of different ways of affecting us physiologically as well. So, I mean, there's almost no limit to the ingenuity of this cabal which rules the world. It's really quite incredible. And so when I discovered this, I, like many people who come across this information, because many people have this information and reject it, I decided to accept it. I looked at it, I think, on an honest evidential basis, and I concluded it was true, and therefore it was necessary to live my life in accordance with that information, not pretend it wasn't there. And so Hapanmo was born. I understood that the armament and the weaponry of this cabal is secrecy. Their whole power lies within the fact that they can operate covertly. And so the secret to defeating them is simply exposure. It's simply information being put out there for people to see and to also accept. And so that's what I endeavour to do. I've dedicated my life to this.
Yeah.
So I hope that in the course of my lifetime I can do something, even if it's just a tiny bit, to weaken the stranglehold that this cabal has over us, this malevolent ruling class, and to set the planet free and the people who live on her.
Yeah.
So that's a short version of a long story about the various stages I went through to become what I am today. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, next thing I'd like to raise is, have you ever thought that it's because you look like Churchill that the woman who was a close friend of your mother was so cruel to you?
Oh yes. Look like Churchill the dog or Churchill the man.
Oh.
Winston Churchill, I assume you mean. Right. This is going back to something we covered on a previous video, didn't we?
Yeah.
And please do check Kathy's back catalogue, because I've done. I think this is the 4th or 5th interview I've done with you now.
The last one, I think.
Yeah, the last one was a year ago, but
Yeah.
We did talk about this old lady who turned up in my home.
Your home.
Yeah. Now, as far as I know, I'm not related to Winston Churchill. I mean, maybe I do look like him a bit.
You do.
But what reason? I mean, the question is, what reason did this person who's one of the founders of the Tavistock Institute?
And her background.
She's one of the most infernal names in the history of psychological warfare. I mean, I didn't know who she was at the time. She's just someone my mum brought home one day, because my mother was a mature student and she studied psychology. I tell this full story in the previous video. She was a mature student. She worked as a cinema usherette, and she decided to get an education when she was in her 30s, and she did. She went to a place in Rugby in Warwickshire where she studied to be a counsellor. She got a degree in psychology from Oxford Brookes, and then went on to study counselling. She came home with this old lady, this old Scottish lady called Isabel. And Isabel, for reasons I'll go into more detail in the previous video, or the details are, Isabel was very, very abusive towards me.
Yeah.
She was psychologically abusive, very, very much so. And not only towards me, but she somehow co-opted my own mother into joining her in this abuse, which is very, very upsetting for a boy who's 13 or so.
Yeah.
It's extremely upsetting when your own mother does that. But why? It was a good question. I mean, it's the connection between Winston Churchill. I'm not sure about. I mean, I'm not related to him as far as I know. But I mean, I think it's because there may have been something about me even back then. I've spoken to other people about this. There may have been something about me which indicated what I was going to be. And for whatever reason, she was sent into our family to break me down. And maybe I should feel flattered that someone so eminent, or I would say notorious is the word I would use, was deployed just for poor little me.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. Honestly, it was not pleasant. It was very, very upsetting at the time. I didn't feel flattered. I felt awful. I didn't even know who she was. It was only many years later I found out that she was Isabel Menzies Live. If you know anything about psychological warfare, that name is absolutely infamous.
Wow.
She's one of the world pioneers.
God.
So the reason why it was me, why me, why she tackled me, is because maybe there's something about me. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what it was. Maybe there's something about me which even back then gave some hint of what I would turn into. This tinfoil hat wearing loon you see before you.
Okay. All right. So next. I want to say that I know the NHS lost an amazing employee who was you, and whom I feel could never really be replaced. You couldn't. You know.
I'm glad you realise that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Not meant.
So
they don't.
what year did that loss to them take place? Were you aware that every part of the NHS senior staff is trained by common purpose, as is the government, civil servants, universities and the like.
Well, this happened in 2012.
Oh,
It was January 2012 when I got sacked.
okay.
Oh yeah.
Alright.
Just munching on Satsumas. I was discharged from the NHS in January 2012, following a very, very suspicious, I think, witch hunt to remove me from my job, in which normal procedure was not followed. And I get the feeling there was a lot between the lines which they didn't tell me. Now, as far as losing a good employee, there's no room for false modesty. I was one of the most valuable members of portering staff in terms of my experience, in terms of my dedication, in terms of my training. I was. I'm glad you think so.
Yeah.
But and I'm sure patients appreciated me too, and the other staff appreciated me. But unfortunately, in the NHS, I don't know how many viewers have worked for public service bureaucracies, but really they don't care. It doesn't matter whether you're good or bad, really. You could be. There were some really awful people working there who, in any right-minded institution, would be dismissed immediately because they were useless, lazy, incompetent, deliberately so, and but they were allowed to get away with it. And it says an awful lot about the NHS.
Yeah.
And what was the rest of the question?
Well, the last part of the question was, were you aware that every part of the senior staff in NHS is trained by common purpose?
I was not aware that every member of senior staff.
Yeah.
I know that a large number of them are. I went to commonpurposeexposed.com, and there's a list of graduates which have been obtained by the Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
However, that list does not include people who are non-graduates but are trained by those particular graduates, these change agents as they call them. Common Purpose is a globalist, cultural Marxist, Agenda 21 think tank. It's part of the same network as the Tavistock Institute, for which Isabel Benzies Live was one of the founders. And so it doesn't surprise me. I know the NHS is absolutely infested with common purpose graduates, as is the police, as is education, academia, as is the government, public services, as is the civil service, as is the armed forces, as is the pharmaceutical industry. Almost everywhere you go, as you go up towards the top of the pyramid, common purpose has its sticky fingers in there.
Yeah.
They are, as Brian Gerrish explains, they are literally a fifth column infiltration organisation that has carried out a long march through the institutions in order to demolish them so they could be rebuilt in a new form. That quote, "long march through the institutions," is actually from Antonio Gramsci, who actually had that idea almost 100 years ago, that society could be broken down and rebuilt into a new form not through overt takeovers, but through slow and silent encroachments. And so common purpose and it doesn't surprise me that common purpose is infested the NHS, because, as Brian Gerrish said, nothing works anymore, and the NHS certainly doesn't work anymore, and it is being broken apart in little bits. And if someone gets in the way, like me, they immediately they engineer you out of your job.
Yeah.
And they do that this happens to so many people. This happens to people who are in the police. I know 2-3 policemen now who have been removed from their services because of their interest in these subjects, in conspiratorial, paranormal, ufological subjects. A clergyman, I know someone in the church, I know of several people in the media. The list goes on. Why is the same policy being enacted in all these supposedly different institutions? What's the common thread between them all? Common purpose, yeah. I think that is the mechanism by which this change, this destruction and rebuilding is being orchestrated.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's very weird.